Hi everyone, and welcome back to Work Wired with Rich, the show where we get into the honest and filtered side of what it really takes to make work, well, work. I'm Richard Fondley, your host and Asia Managing Director at CXC. If you're a LinkedIn listening to this, I'm guessing your day has already been full. Maybe you've answered a bunch of messages, jumped on a couple of calls, grabbed a quick coffee in between meetings, emails, and more meetings and emails. A lot of leaders tell me if they feel they're constantly in motion, stuck in a kind of sprint mode that never really stops. So today we're talking about where all that leadership energy actually goes and why it feels like the pace never really lets up, even on the days when you can expect it to. And I've got the perfect person to talk to you about this. Paul Grainger is with me today. Hello, Paul. Paul's been coaching leaders across Asia for over 30 years, and he has the great way of helping people breathe again in the middle of all the chaos. He's spoken to so many leaders who feel this constant sprint, and he's brilliant at helping them find clarity in this mess. Sounds amazing, doesn't it? So, Paul, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Rich. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, fantastic, Paul. It's great to have you on the show. And Paul, in your words, let's a bit of an introduction of who is Paul Grainger. Is someone with 30 years experience? Tell you all about your history.
Yeah, so I actually started in the field of education, helping people. Gradually, I've kind of evolved into establishing my own company a few years ago. Essentially, I am a trusted strategic partner to different organizations, especially in the APAC region, really helping them with all the things that you've just discussed, helping them with performance, helping them with communication, and really looking at the root causes of what's causing those issues. So we really look at not quick fixes, but really looking at sustainable solutions to make sure that people don't go back to default and go back to what they were doing before and making change permanent.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. And I suppose it's been a journey from the corporate side to being an entrepreneur. So I'm sure our leaders, our HR leaders, our heads of procurement, or anyone that's listening today is going to have some really great ideas to take away with them today. So let's get straight into the questions. Yeah, you've mentioned something, we've talked about it ourselves in our own conversation about a permanent sprint. So what does it feel like for a leader to be in this permanent sprint mode day after day, Paul?
Yeah, so I think in leadership, speed is nothing new. For the last 50, 60 years, leaders are used to doing things quickly. That's essentially what helps them to be a leader, the ability to do things quickly. So it's not speed that's the issue. The issue is when you tie in two other factors, certainty and complexity. I think maybe let me just share an analogy to sort of give you a picture. I think we're both old enough to remember one of Keanu Reeves's first movies. I think it was Speed, right? When he was on the bus with the bomb.
I know it well. So maybe he's probably out hair.
Yeah. So I just want you to imagine that you're Keanu Reeves in that movie, and you're not allowed to. You're in this bus. You're driving this bus down an expressway, and you're going really, really fast, but you're going in a straight line. Now that's not really going to be an issue because you're just going in a straight line, and there's no kind of turning points. However, let's add in a few things to that to make it a little bit more complicated. Now, imagine that you don't know where you're going. It's uncertain. And so you have no idea where the destination is. And the road is not just one road. It's lots of small paths going down dead ends and all kinds of small roads, big roads. So that's one thing that would really stress people out.
Cool.
The other thing is, imagine that you're driving a bus, which you've never driven a bus before, but it's an EV bus, and you've never even driven an EV vehicle. It's highly complex. So that's another layer to add to this. So I think a lot of leaders are in a situation where they're on full speed. They're going in this uncertain direction. So many things are happening. So many things are being thrown at them. And the layer of complexity in their organization with different reporting lines, with reorgs, all that kind of stuff, with AI, it's adding in this other layer, which is really piling on the pressure in terms of making leaders uncertain, unsure, and putting them in a challenging position.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think we're probably the most complex after, I don't know, 30 years of leadership. I think the complexities of leadership now are probably more than they've ever been. As in, there's so many more distractions, and that could be anything from, technology. It could be the multiple ways of working. It could be the role is more diverse now. It's working with remote teams. It's constant, right? And it's also, I'm sure that someone's taken 2 months away of the year because the years definitely seem to be getting shorter.
That's one thing, Richard, that came out of my research is that with all those distractions, leaders are, 10, 20 years ago, they were primarily focused on making decisions. Nowadays, because of all those things that are being thrown at them from every end, leaders are now spending more time filtering that information, the outside noise, the internal noise. And so that's becoming really draining for leaders. So by the time they have to make a decision, they're running on empty. And therefore, often they don't make the best decision.
Yeah, I can see that. And I suppose that leads us really nicely into what my next question was going to be. So, throughout the year, and you're working with so many different leaders, but when you are working with them, who are like getting to that point of running on empty, or, the tank's getting to that last bit before it goes, you see the empty sign. What are the subtle signs you notice before they hit that kind of, they've run out of fuel, they've broken down? What are those subtle signs you've seen?
Well, it's interesting you asked me what I think the subtle signs are, because normally when I'm talking to leaders themselves are unaware of those signs. Other people are more aware than they are that person is under stress or kind of internally hijacked, as I might call it. So imagine that you're going back to our kind of Keanu Reeves analogy. A lot of people in that situation, when they're on that bus going quickly, going in uncertain directions, they panic, and they might kind of bottle up that fear, that panic, because they're the leader. They don't want to show that.
Mm.
However, a lot of them, what I find is that they're completely unaware that they are struggling. That may sound a bit of a strange thing to say, but they normalize it. It's just part of being a leader. And I met a leader who I've known for quite a while. I haven't seen this leader for several years now. And I asked her, how are you? And she gave me this look like, oh, and I could see it was like a deflated look. And without any words, I knew her energy was really low. So in terms of the subtle signs, to answer your question, I think it's just a decrease of energy that you see, that you immediately feel, even without saying anything. And another thing I might add to this, another more kind of visual sign, is people stop being curious. When they're drained, they kind of go to that kind of mental default, and there's no curiosity anymore, and they become more reactive. That may show up in different ways. So I think it's low energy, curiosity is low, and reactivity is high. Deadly combination.
Some of that resonates with me, and people, you think back of people you've worked with. I mean, I'm a big Ted Lasso fan, so when he says be curious, what you can also see is that a lot of leaders are very good at covering that energy level, but the people that actually see it to their family and the loved ones, so when they get home, they're completely deflated, or they've just got nothing more to give, right? They've kind of left everything out on the playing field, if you get what I mean. So that can also be a sign, I'd suggest.
I think a lot of leaders are good at hiding it, but the reality is people can't hide it for a long time, and it will show.
Yeah.
Neuroscience says that our brains pick up on those kind of chemicals, and the brain tells us this person is negatively charged at the moment, or this person is positively charged. It's as simple as that. Imagine going into, you got room A and room B, and room A, you go into, there's somebody there who's perhaps somebody who triggers you, and the energy in that room is kind of very, very tense. You get out of that room after 5 minutes, go to room B, and your best friend is there. That warm energy, that can change in a second. So it's that kind of, energy exchange that people don't really pick up on. That's a really interesting thing that other people pick up on.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I mean, I'll be honest, and I'm always very transparent. I probably felt that myself, right? You're getting to the end of the year, you're having the same conversation again. That the level for the level to get frustrated, you start the year going, listening, talking. By the end of the year, the frustration level, and you're just like, but when you see, your friends, or you're working with the colleagues that you want to talk about, it's great. And I suppose from this, if you're seeing that somebody's running on empty, how does that manifest in some ways? Like, how does it affect maybe a leader to make decisions or align with their teams, for example? If they're running on empty, you see those signs, what would they, I suppose, do differently? In terms of that kind of interaction with people?
I think what happens is when you have that formula of speed multiplied by uncertainty multiplied by complexity, that increases the chances that we are going to get emotionally hijacked. Let's use that language for now. Emotionally hijacked, highly reactive. And so let's put this in a real business example. What I hear a lot of leaders talking about is back-to-back meetings. Mm-hmm. Can you relate to that, Richard?
Yeah, definitely.
I thought so. So imagine that you have one meeting, let's say early afternoon. You finish your meeting, and that meeting has gone really, really badly. You've heard a piece of really bad news, or something has an urgent issue has come up. You've lost a big sale, whatever it is, and then you go into the next meeting. Now, when you go into that next meeting, and remember they're back-to-back meetings, so you maybe got a minute between meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that leader going into that room, into the new meeting, will be able to connect with his or her team to be able to make good decisions following that meeting?
I think it'd be challenging. I think some people could do it, like they can mask it and they can go, they shuffle off. I think long term that's probably not a healthy thing to do, but they could probably breathe and go, right, another meeting, put a line in it. But what's going on in that back of the head? What's happening in that? In those moments, like, are they actually 100% there? Are they engaged, or are they kind of going through the going through the kind of hamster wheel in terms of that, or going through the motions?
So here's the key. What's kind of make or break for them in this scenario is how quickly can they recover? Recovery time. If they can recover quickly, okay, let's take the example that they can't recover in time. They go into that meeting, they're emotionally hijacked, and they feel frustrated. Can they be empathetic to their team? Can they connect to their team when they're frustrated? They're almost polar opposites. You can't be frustrated on the one side and empathetic on the other side. It's kind of counterintuitive. Yeah. Imagine they're angry. Let's say they've lost a sale. They're angry. But in the next meeting, they're required to think strategically. Can they do both at the same time? Very, very unlikely. So it's really about that kind of speed of recovery. And just to use maybe a sporting analogy, I'm sure you may have seen that Roger Federer inauguration speech maybe a year ago, where he talks about, as a previous world champion for 20 years, he asks the audience, what percentage of games do you think he's won? He says 80%, which is not really surprising, right? Because he's a world champion. So he's won 80% of his games in his 20-year or whatever history. And then he asked, what percentage of points has he won? And the answer was really surprising. Do you want to have a guess?
Hard. Whenever it's surprising, I think it's going to be quite low, right? So maybe it's going to be like 40% of points he's won or something like that. Is that?
He probably wouldn't be a champion if he was 40%.
Yeah, I was trying to work out. Is it 9? The opposite way.
It's 54. It's 54%.
4%. Okay.
Points won. And so that kind of shows you that
the margin of winning.
It's the fine margins. If you are losing almost 1 every 2 times, what does that mean for your speed of recovery? Your speed of recovery needs to be really good, because if he lost a point and he starts blaming himself, shaming himself, thinking, oh, I should have done better, overthinking it, he's going to carry that into his next point and he's going to be less effective. So a lot of times in tennis, what they're realizing nowadays is that the mental side is it's equally important as the physical side, because it's such a game of fine margins and the real champions are on top of it mentally. Djokovic is another example. He really talks a lot about the mental side and about the power of kind of mental recovery. So going back to our kind of business scenario, imagine that the leader was able to recover between those kind of those meetings. He was able to kind of press the reset button, go into his or her second meeting. And this time, let's say he's heard some bad news about one of his sales team members says, look, I lost a really important deal. In this case, because he's reset, he'd be able to be empathetic. He'll say, okay, tell us more. I understand this happens. Tell us more. So he'd be able to start by being empathetic. Then he may be able to be, going back to our curious an analogy earlier, he'd be curious to say, tell me more. Why exactly? What happened? So the leader's really trying to get to the root, not make assumptions, but get to the root of why that deal was lost, what the scenario was. And then they may be able to think, okay, well, let's think about the big picture. So now the leader can think strategically about how this all fits into the big picture. And then if he's reset himself, he'd be able to kind of think about, well, let's brainstorm solutions together. Let's get creative. Again, if you're hijacked, you can't get creative.
Ooh.
And then finally, once they've brainstormed the solutions, they'd be able to get into action.
Yeah.
But that doesn't happen if one is frustrated, angry, disappointed, all of those negative emotions.
Wow. I love that. Some fantastic analogies. The emotionally hijacked. We're on the speed bus, flying around, kind of hijacked. Being curious, but I mean, and sorry, going a little bit off topic, but if you're feeling that you've identified with yourself that you've been emotionally hijacked, you are back to back in meetings. What have you got any tools that could get you to kind of reset in that point? Like if you're going to walk into the next meeting, do you go, I mean, if you're in a bad place, it's probably best just cancel the meeting, right? If it can be moved. Because a lot of the times, we're in meetings going, well, is it the best time to use that? But I'm sure there's probably something you could do to reset, or how do you kind of manage that?
I think before we maybe look at reset techniques, I think we need to just go back one step.
Okay.
And think about, why are people reacting in the first place?
Yeah. Okay.
Just do a quick diagnostic and then we'll go to the tools. So I think what people are reacting to most is I think there's three things in general that triggers most people. The third one is going to be the most unexpected one. Okay.
Okay.
So the first one, I think there's no surprise for you, Richard. The first one is people.
Yep. Okay.
We react to other people because they're in front of us, right? We can start judging them. They're judging us. We start blaming them. And the problem with that is that we waste a lot of time. So we're kind of, we end up half listening. We're not fully present. We end up wasting time with, with unnecessary squabbles and conflicts. So the first one is people. The second thing that we react to most is circumstances. So that might be an email with bad news. It might be one of your staff members sharing that they lost a deal. Something that appears on the surface, this is bad. And what happens is we waste a lot of time by lingering on those setbacks, thinking that they're bad. I kind of call this the 3 a.m. dilemma, where you're up at 3 a.m. kind of thinking about stuff that's going to happen the next day, thinking about worrying about things, worrying about these circumstances, how they're going to go.
I know.
And
well,
yes,
I'd like to say I don't. I'm not just listening to your thoughts going, yeah, okay, this is me. Actually, it's like a personal session.
So the last one, as I said, the last one is probably the most unexpected one. So the first two are people, circumstance. The last one is we react to our own, what I call inner critic. So all those questions that we ask ourselves: am I good enough? Is this perfect enough? Did I really do the best of my ability here? That persistent self-doubt, that's a constant. And the challenging thing with that is that it's, for most people, it's invisible. And just to give you an example, I'm going to make this visible by giving you some symptoms here. And maybe from your own team, you can let me know if this is something that you see among teams or teams that you've worked with in the past. So people coming to you as a leader requiring constant validation, constant approval when approval is not really necessary, or reassurance. Is that something that you see a lot?
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, persistent self-doubt. Why are they doing that? They're doubting themselves.
Yeah. Self-doubt can be sometimes thinking you could just be doing better, right? Or why is this not?
But that is still self-doubt.
Yeah, as I say,
the perfectionist. Yeah, that's
Or sometimes where you've had, I'm talking from a personal experience. Like sometimes you worked really hard a week, but you're like, I didn't get any further forward. Like, what did I miss? Like, but I feel exhausted. I've had loads of conversations. Yeah. I mean,
that's what I'm talking about. That's the inner critic in your ear saying to you, Rich, you haven't done well enough this week. You could do much better. What are you doing? You're supposed to be, so and so. So that's the inner critic, and I think it really helps when I'm working with clients. I really try to encourage them to think of the inner critic as one part of you. Maybe call the inner critic a name,
right?
And so that it's almost, it becomes a bit more visible, because the inner critic, it does its most dirtiest work when it goes undetected.
Oh, okay.
When we believe the voice of our inner critic, when we believe that it is us, when in fact it's not.
Is there a third part where you just have a critic, where someone has criticized you about something or said, oh, you need to do this better, or you haven't done this the right way, and then it kind of beats you up inside, right? You have that internal conundrum like going, well, that's not fair.
And the interesting thing that I find is that maybe for most people listening to this, they probably think, well, this applies really to middle managers or below. And they think, oh, top senior leaders, they're obviously successful, they're leading an organization. Surely they can't have inner critics. They have inner critics more than the middle managers. but
Is it
it's probably more deeply hidden.
right? Or is it being
Because of comparison. Because of comparison. That's one of the main reasons. There's always someone better.
Yeah, and if you're working in a successful organization as well, I suppose success breeds success. But I suppose it's how you manage that critic. Back to your tennis analogy, it's like when the stress gets going, like, how do they go from point to point?
This persistent self-doubt, you see it with hesitation in your team.
Mm.
You see it shows up in people avoiding either difficult conversations, procrastinating, or perhaps procrastinating on difficult decisions. And that gradually festers and makes things worse. Or it shows up in people doing kind of the low stakes work and kind of leaving the high stakes work until tomorrow.
Mm.
And so all of these things, when you they all multiply together to kind of, when things are fast, when they're uncertain and they're complex, that is multiplying the inner critic. It's creating the conditions for the inner critic to say, hey, Richard, why are you doing this? This is not good enough.
Mm.
So that scenario that we talked about with the bus analogy, that is accelerating and multiplying the inner critic.
Right. And I suppose, like, in the modern world and in the modern business world or family life, it's even got more prevalent because there is so many distractions, things hitting us at multiple times, right? So, the inner critic might not just come from work, it might also come from your personal life and the fact that you're looking at Instagram going like, why am I not chilled out on holiday when, and running $1 billion company when, like, I seem to be just working all the time. So I suppose there's so many triggers to it, but also, some people can get over that. One of my favorite analogies or kind of quotes is there's two short paths, right? So it's very much like, you're going to be doing really well, but there's two short paths. And if you're not, if something's going wrong, there's two short paths. That often is there from that inner critic component where you are your biggest critic. And that voice is always in the back of your head, which is crazy. And I suppose relating to this, like I read your recent white paper, which listeners, if you want to get it, it is absolutely fantastic about where Paul's gone and interviewed. I think it was 39 leaders around Asia, all from different backgrounds around leadership and how they're managing day to day. And leading on from that inner critic, the one piece that came out that was really staggering, really stuck with me, that you're saying that the leaders are using nearly a full day to reactivity, right? Some of it can be this inner critic where they're actually just got a decision paralysis and they're not working, or is it where they're reacting to things the most? Where and what pulls leaders off course at this moment in time?
It's those three things that we spoke about at root level, which is what we're talking about here: people, circumstances, and inner critic. They cause people not to listen effectively, not to listen, half listen, I call it. They cause conflict. They cause drops in energy. They cause people to waste time lingering on setbacks. So just as an example, you could literally be frustrated that you've lost a deal or that somebody else has lost a deal for hours and hours and hours, and that kind of ruins your whole day.
Okay.
And then all the other things we talked about, the other side effects, avoiding those tough conversations, drawing things out for longer, avoiding tough decisions, doing the low stakes work, requiring validation. There's unnecessary checks. So all of those things cause people an enormous amount of wasted time and energy. And that's why in the research, it came out that all of this is causing people to waste at least 1 day per working week. Imagine if you could get all of that back and recover quickly, you would be doing 5 days work in 4 days.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, going back to your point, I mean, I've had really good salespeople that's lost a deal and it becomes like a mourning, like they're actually mourning it and they can't get over it. It's because it's like a relationship. Especially if it's been over a long time and they put so much effort in there and they keep bringing it back up and they're talking about it. So I know how that can do it. But I think on the reactivity, I think you've nailed it. The people, in the critic, I think just where the business is at that point in time can also make that very reactionary. Why does it make it feel so hard for leaders to stay clear-headed when you mentioned feels urgent?
Yeah.
Yeah, is there a mystical way that they do? Yeah,
Because it's not taught. We don't learn at school or university. Where have you ever seen how to stay clear-headed? It's never taught. Even in most leadership programs, it's kind of assumed, but it's never really taught. But I find that a lot of leaders, they kind of do this intuitively. Well, let me ask you perhaps, what do you do to kind of blow off steam?
I learned about something years ago called a third space, which is before you get home or whatever you do, you kind of have an area that can just not reset, but can kind of get there. So I think music, I listen to music in terms of that. Back in the day, I would probably go to the pub with your friends. After work, you had a long week. Well, it's rewarding. I could go and have a beer. Exercise is probably a key one for me. Um, Conversations. Sometimes if you're at work, you want to that kind of blast steam. It's sometimes like they just you direct the conversation away from that to something else that you want to talk about. Um, I suppose a lot of people now just get to scrolling away in terms of I start just look at Instagram for half an hour or Facebook or something. Showing age now, probably most people haven't turned on Facebook anymore. But yeah, I think it's there. I think they're probably the ones for me.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned about scrolling, because quite often that does the opposite effect, because we are scrolling through stuff, because more than 50% of stuff that we read online is negative. You know, if people are scrolling through TikTok videos or whatever, they're going to find something they don't like, and that's going to make them worse, not better. And also I noticed that most of those, I think you mentioned about 7 things there, about 5 out of those 7 things, they're done outside, right? Exercise, going to the pub, they're done outside, out of work hours. And that's where the problem is, because we can't wait. We've got 1 minute between meetings. We can't wait until the end of the day to kind of, get back to normal, to kind of get back into that sort of positive state of mind. We need to do it in the moment. We need to recover quickly. So we need something much faster that's going to help us recover and reset.
Yeah. I'm sure most people, if you're driving in your car, sitting on the train, or, walking to work, you listen to this, quite a lot of people will be nodding at, oh, that's me. That's it. But is there a quiet sign that maybe something leaders brush off that actually signals they're mentally overloaded? Because a lot of people don't like to admit they're feeling overloaded, or, it's a sign of weakness. They don't want to tell their boss or even their peer, because they might think they're like, oh, they can't cope, they're not good enough, they're not hard enough, any of these things. But there might be also you working next to someone, and you kind of like looking at them going, are you okay? And if you ask anyone if they're okay, they go, yeah. Or, yeah, I'm okay. And if they do say, yeah, actually, would you like to talk? The other person's like, no. Oh, I didn't want to actually answer. But yeah, is there any quiet signs or actual signals that someone's mentally overloaded that we can look out for?
This is a really interesting question, because at the end of the day, we can't fight an enemy that we can't see. So we need to, the first step in dealing with this is to notice our emotional state. And we can't do that if we're on autopilot. So I like to keep things really simple. So the question that I would pose and advise people listening to think about, and even you can think about it right now, is, at the moment, am I now in positive emotion or negative emotion? It's as simple as that. By negative emotion, it could be, am I feeling frustrated? Am I feeling anxious, stressed, disappointed, worried, bored? So if you're feeling any of those emotions for more than 1 second, you're essentially self-sabotaging yourself. Because if it continues for minutes, for hours, as we mentioned 20 minutes or so ago, you can't be stressed and empathetic at the same time. You lose that superpower. You're losing your superpowers by staying in those negative emotions. So a lot of people ask me, because I work with a lot of what we call type A personality types who tell me, Paul, negative emotions, they drive me. They make me stronger. They give me energy. And I think the thing to think here is that negative emotions are useful for us because they act as triggers. They act to say, hey, something is going wrong here. Something needs to be done. But if you're feeling frustrated for 10 minutes, for 30 minutes, that's not a good thing. It's okay to feel frustrated for a few seconds. So the key thing is to notice when you feel those emotions and then know how to kind of snap out of it. So imagine that if you're working in a team and the team never ever feels any negative emotion, that's actually a bad thing, because they'll continue making the same mistakes. They'll not question themselves or each other. It's going to be a disaster. So, but the thing is to recognize when others and when you are in that negative emotion, and be able to kind of, as Roger Federer described, how he's able to kind of recover quickly through resetting themselves in the moment. That's the key.
Right. Okay. I like that. I think that, that negative emotion, if you're hanging it on for too long in terms of all that frustration, because it eats away at you, right? And then, as you said, going back to your...
And it's invisible. The problem is it's invisible. People don't know it's eating away at them, but other people will know. That's what we spoke about a while back, that other people will notice, but the person themselves don't notice, because it's just part of who they are, maybe in the workplace. It's just that it's their kind of, it's almost become their personality, how they carry themselves. So it's difficult to kind of step out of that without awareness.
But does it also have the, does I thought, like, so can someone be feeling like this, like be emotionally hijacked, that they could be, feeling, because as you mentioned, there could be someone that's constantly like that, as people say, be a bit of a Karen, negative Nora, the mood hoover in the office, right? And that's someone that's, you was there. But what happens if it just happens that it could be that person that happens for that day? You've had a bad day, you've gone there, like, not quite often, probably a bit similar to myself. I've always had the ability to, if something negative's happening, kind of draw a line in the sand and move on, right? You can kind of go to dust yourself off and go, right, well, we've got to keep going. But in the back of your mind is that little thing going, oh, that's really frustrating. What's is that a normal thing for leaders as well, that they can be down one day, up the next, or is it more, you see, a lot of them are quite constant?
Yeah, I think I see two types of leaders. I see one type of leader who is very up and down.
Right.
And is very noticeable. You've probably worked with people in the past who, as soon as you step in the room and you're going to talk to them, okay, he's in a good mood or she's in a good mood. Or, oh no, this person's maybe not a good time to talk.
Well,
or you kind of get the steady Eddie type who kind of mask their emotions. You don't know whether they're having a good or bad day.
Right.
Neither of them is good or bad. They're just different.
Right.
It's kind of knowing. It's about knowing yourself, about essentially what your trigger points are, and recognizing when you are in those states, and almost kind of managing your week. For the people who have real highs and real lows, kind of anticipating, okay, Wednesday, I have 3 meetings with people who trigger me.
Right.
I need to really be on my game on Wednesday. So to kind of, so there are ways that we can preempt and make sure that people are kind of going into these days where they are likely to be on a low, and do what they can to manage that.
Yeah, good advice. And I suppose if you know it's a big day, you've got presentations or something, don't have those tricky individuals a meeting, but often, probably speaking for leaders there, there's always someone, you see the email coming to your inbox, you're like, oh.
If you are a leader and you can kind of manage to some extent manage your meetings, I did this a couple of years ago where I would look at my meetings and I would color code them. And if you see, red was potential triggers, maybe like a traffic light system, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And green are great. This is going to be a great meeting. I look forward to this meeting. So you can sort of color code your calendar that way. And then, so if you see, oh my goodness, Thursday, red, then we need to take some preventative measures for that.
But how do you explain to people if they ever see your diary and go, why am I always in red?
Because you're special.
Yeah. Or if we do want to reset, what is a small reset habit that leaders can get back? So in the middle of the day, it's a really fast day. What can get us back on track?
Yeah, we finally come to this question. You asked this question.
I'm not going to.
So
I want my.
I think we've preempted
I
it.
want my
Quite well.
I want my tool. Don't you worry.
So let me start by telling you what not to do.
Okay.
And in fact, let's take this out of the workplace and do that 3 a.m. example that you sympathized with.
Yeah.
If you wake up at 3 a.m. and you have something that you're worried about, something that you're thinking about, the worst thing you can do is continue thinking about it.
Yeah.
That's where overthinking comes in.
Mm.
Because it's very unlikely that you're going to think your way out of the problem. You're going to make things worse. It's that negative spiral.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to think of your brain is wired to be negative. It's just how we're made. It's built for us to survive. We always perceive threats, and so the negative is always going to be more powerful than the positive. And thinking our way out of it is not the way to do it. So what we need to do in terms of a reset is we need to do the opposite. And the opposite of thinking is feeling, is breathing. It's using the 5 senses. So just as an example, if you were in a meeting, and maybe you can try to do this, Richard, and just rub your thumb and your forefinger together and really focus on it, and do it with such a tension that you could feel the fingertip ridges.
Mm-hmm. Yep, doing it.
And do the same on the other hand. Really feel those fingertip ridges. Now, doing that just for 10 seconds, you probably don't feel any different, right?
Yep.
But if you were to do that for, let's say, 30 seconds or 1 minute, where hopefully while you were doing that, Richard, you were really focusing on it. And if you really focus on it, you're literally like pressing a reset, like a computer reset, where you're pressing that and it's booting up again. But it allows you to pause your thoughts. And sometimes just pausing your thoughts through focusing on, it could be what I call these sensory repetitions or sensory reps. So touching something, really paying attention to what you're touching. It could be, for example, it could also be through breathing. Just taking 3 deep breaths. And, a lot of people ask me, well, all these different reset activities, is it a bit like meditation? The answer is yes and no. these reset activities, and a lot of them are done with eyes closed. Meditation, it's a specialized form of meditation. The thing with meditation is, a few minutes ago, we talked about we need something that is quick and easy to do in the office. For people who meditate, where do they meditate? They generally don't meditate in the workplace. They meditate at home, maybe at the weekend, maybe at the end of the day. So you can't meditate really, in the 5 minutes between meetings. And also a lot of meditators, it's almost the world of meditation is kind of split 50-50. Either you love it or you hate it, right?
Yeah.
And also meditation is actually quite hard, because meditation, there's different forms of meditation, but you've got to clear your mind. For most people, that's almost impossible. So that's why these kind of sensory reps where you're doing this, and it's easy to do. Everyone can breathe. Everyone can focus on a sound, closing your eyes, listening to what's the nearest sound you can hear. What's the furthest sound you can hear? Just getting in tune with your senses. If you're at home and you're washing your hands, feeling the temperature of water on your hands. If you're having a shower, feeling the warmth or the coldness of the water on you. That's why a lot of people get their best ideas in the shower, when they're walking in nature, because they're focusing on their senses. They're not overthinking. It's nature's way of helping us give our superpowers. But unfortunately, when we're in a permanent sprint and with so many distractions and so much noise around us, everything is preventing us from doing that.
Right. I like that. And I can see why now, I used to do morning runs or whatever in nature. I was like, well, I always want my best ideas. I like meditation. I don't transcendental, the 20 minutes. It's too long for me, but a short, like breathing or just trying to clear your heads, just focusing on something. I like the technique of the thumb and finger.
And even
It's a bit like when people do this, then they do that, right? That's the other one, is where you can focus on the different areas.
And even you can do them in meetings by focusing on you can do visual repetitions as well. For example, I can't see the color of your eyes, but focusing on, let's say, the color of somebody's eyes, you probably never noticed that. Yeah. So you can actually do it in the heat of battle. so you can do it. So this you can do under the table. That's why I gave the example, because in a meeting, if you do that under the table, or even just wiggling your toes, feeling the sensation of your feet, wiggling your toes, looking at the color of somebody's hair. So I do a lot of interviews, and sometimes sometimes I do 10 interviews a day. And sometimes when I feel I'm flagging, I do visual repetitions where I just focus on their hair, or focus on a color that I find interesting. So it just gets you out of autopilot.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. It just breaks that kind of fact you're just sitting there or nodding, or you're in the place, but also to bring you back to the present, right? To bring you back into the room. And I suppose on that, if you've got the ability to reset, and thanks for sharing those habits, because I think that for the listeners, there's some just easy things they can apply today, tomorrow, if they're feeling in any way emotionally hijacked. But what do the best leaders do differently to protect their focus and energy, especially in these fast-paced environments? Like, and asking for all your advice here, but what do the best leaders that you've seen do differently?
I look at it this way. I'm going to use another analogy here. Your mind is like a phone battery.
Mm-hmm.
So you charge it up overnight, and then maybe most people unless they're working from home, they go into the office. So I want you to imagine waking up in the morning. What do people do first? They start checking their phone.
Mm-hmm.
They start checking the news.
Yep.
They're already setting themselves up for reactivity.
Mm.
Even before they've stepped in the shower. They're getting messages from here, good news, bad news. They're focusing on the bad news. So if they take, let's say, the train, they're scrolling through TikTok. This is what I always see people do nowadays. 100 TikTok videos. by the time they get to the office, they're mentally depleted. Their phone battery is literally zero. Their mental phone battery is zero. And so, when you're looking at Formula One racing cars, they stop. They come to a pit stop, during the race, maybe 3 or 4 times. So even race cars, they come to a complete stop. Leaders in organizations, they never stop. They never allow themselves to stop because they feel it's a sign of weakness. So I think it's that mindset of the best leaders that I've seen, they don't criminalize time for themselves, even if it's just a short time. And again, those sensory reps that I was talking about, the best leaders do a form of that without calling them sensory reps. But they do a form of that to kind of mentally reset during the day at times. If you don't do that, your battery by midday is going to be spent.
Yeah.
And then the afternoon is going to be an afternoon of reactivity, conflict, avoidance, whatever you want to call it. This is probably something that you've seen, with many people that you've worked with,
Yeah, definitely. I think the phone, the checking, and I think it's unfortunate now because your phone's your alarm clock. It's where you listen to music or podcast. Before you used to have a separate alarm clock. You used to have a phone, but you only use your phone there. Didn't check an email straight away. You'd listen to music on your iPod, and then it kind of gave you that break, right? But automatically, if you pick up your phone, you're gonna check, right? Unless you are the one of the strongest person in the world, that won't go, oh, I'll just check that. Especially in businesses like SIDS, we're a global business, so a lot of our clients are from the US or in different countries. The email you sent to the end of the day, it's probably been replied to. And then sometimes you would get that where your whole day can be completely hijacked because the email's got a negative response, difference between a negative mood. You're like, oh, no, this is gone. Or you see an email from a client where it's like, we want you to give some feedback or something like that. You're like, oh dear. It's great when you get positive ones, but
Richard, we're not saying don't check emails. We're saying add in a quick rep maybe before the email. So for example, what do you touch? What do you touch when you check an email? You touch your mouse. So what about for 10 seconds, you make a routine every day that before you check your email on your phone or on your computer, let's use a laptop, right? I know you're probably more likely to use your phone, but if you're using your laptop, feel the ridges of your mouse. I know it sounds a bit weird, but just make it a routine, but it just recenters you. If you're checking on your phone, check part of the phone that you've never touched before. Check the temperature. Check. See if there's any scratches. Something like that. It can make a huge difference.
Okay. I like that. I think I'll try it. I mean, a lot of phones have cases. They've got ridges on it. They've got things like that. So, it's good. So we've covered so much ground already, but we've got the signs when you do feel that you might be overloaded. We've had some small reset habits of how we can manage that. We also, what do leaders do differently? I totally agree with that. The people that you've worked with well, give themselves some time, thinking time. Maybe they go walking, and they you listen to a podcast just to refresh their mind. Like there's someone else do the talking for a while, but they give them that time even when I try and do it at lunchtime where it's like don't walk straight to the place to get your salad or your food. Go around the block a couple of times, get some sunshine, right? Just reset, clear your head, and you come back in so much more refreshed. We're always looking at the year ahead. It could be a budget time now. It could be a budget, doing your budgets and planning in the middle of the year, depending on how your year go. And I think there's always that cycle of the festive season, you can stop and recharge. I'm like, it doesn't happen like that anymore. The year keeps on going. In Asia, we have many celebrations, many different times the year could stop and start. So, for leaders planning ahead, what's one change they can make, say, this week to lead with more clarity and less noise? What's one change that they could do?
Previously, when I've answered this type of question, giving advice to people, I've been way too ambitious and optimistic in
Okay,
terms of
okay.
what I recommend. So I'm going to give something really, really simple that people are likely to think, well, that's too easy. And that's the point. A 1% gain each day for a year is a 365% improvement in a year.
Amazing.
So I think what's really difficult is adding new habits.
So true.
So I'm not going to recommend any new habits. What I would recommend is integrating with what the listeners are already doing. So 3 maybe examples of sensory resets sensory reps that they can do. But I would recommend, when is the best time to charge your phone? The best time to charge it is at the beginning of the day.
Right.
So when people get up in the morning, they could do 3 resets. As they're walking to the bathroom, they feel their feet on the floor. Like, how often have you ever actually felt your soles of the feet walking to the bathroom? Probably never.
Yeah.
Then if you're having a shower or you're having a bath, just for 10 seconds, make a point of feeling the water. You mentioned before that you got your best ideas in the shower.
Yeah.
Just actually feeling the water. Or if you're brushing your teeth, actually feeling the toothbrush against your gums, against your teeth. Consciously feel it, rather than thinking about the email that you got. Consciously think about that feeling. And people normally eat something before they go out. How about the first time you eat something, the first bite, really notice the taste. Most people are eating and texting at the same time nowadays. So actually notice the taste of the food of the first 2 bites.
Mm-hmm.
Now, these sound really, really simple to do, but they kind of prime your brain at the beginning of the day to get used to this idea of giving yourself a bit of grace in the morning, charging up that mental phone, that your brain, and then you're able to sort of go into the day feeling a bit more charged. And if you need to do a recharge at midday or whenever it is, your brain has always thought, I've already done this in the morning. This is easy. I can do the same thing again. I can do a breathing activity. I can do another type of activity. I can touch my computer screen. So just integrate them into whatever you're doing already. It's not a new habit. You're just integrating them with current habits. Not new, and not taking up any further time, which is the biggest challenge that most leaders have. Not enough time.
Yeah. Because everyone's always like, I'm going to start meditating. I'm going to start a new sport. I'm going to start doing this in the gym, but you're already struggling for time. So unless you can carve out that time, you're actually going to have more anxiety around that. So I really like that, because that's just being really present in the moment. It's like, as you said, when people are having lunch, like, taste your food, like, enjoy it. You paid for it. You like it, like, or is it just matter kind of going in and brushing your teeth? Unfortunately,
do people taste their food?
I not very. Depends what it is. Unfortunately, for putting my feet down, most of the time I wake up with so many sports injuries that I'm like, I can feel everything. I wish I didn't. Yeah, it's really good. Well, look, I think for like today, so much good advice. I think it's very timely for people. It honestly resonates with me around, how you're feeling, what you're doing, that you're in the constant sprint, you're running a million miles an hour. How does that speed affect decisions if you're emotionally hijacked? And then those like real amazing tips just to kind of really just refocus yourself and give yourself some time, right? To actually step back and then get back into that role that you are, which is a leader. And honestly, I think this is prevalent for people that are not in leadership roles as well. I think it's highly prevalent for anyone across business or work or college or anywhere where, you're feeling, emotionally hijacked or overwhelmed. So absolutely fantastic. I think your advice can help many people, and I'm sure all the listeners have enjoyed it. But, I always like to ask, so Paul, you're with all your experience, if they want to work with you, or they want to get some advice, or they want to engage your business, how do we reach out and connect with you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way. So please connect with me on LinkedIn. And I also have a website, unlockdynamic.com. But probably the easiest way is via LinkedIn. Yeah, I'd be more than happy to talk with people.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And but I also like to end with a bit of a different question. So it's always good to ask, if you could gift a leader or someone something, what's the gift you'd give to all our listeners?
So I'm thinking, we've talked a lot about these sensory reps. I think when I think about a present that we could give, I think leaders can literally give themselves presents by doing the suggestions that we mentioned a few minutes ago. Just by gifting themselves the ability to step back, give themselves a minute or two while they're having their morning coffee, really feeling the cup, feeling the warmth, just doing those type of activities. If they gift themselves 1 minute, 2 minutes a day, especially in the morning, that would set up. But there's this expression, if you win the morning, you win the day. So I would recommend everyone to kind of gift themselves that and see what a difference it can make. And I'd love to hear from any listener that is starts doing this on a regular basis and see what a difference it can make.
Fantastic. I love it. So you've heard it here. So gift yourself the present in terms of that, and make yourself really feeling the present, and see how it really affects your day to day. Thank you so much, Paul, for joining the show. That was absolutely fantastic. I'm going to go away. For any of my teams, if anyone sees me, my thumb and finger pressed together heavily, you might know what I'm thinking. But
Do it on the table.
yeah, do it on the table. But I've really enjoyed the conversation, and I think it's really timely. And I think for anyone, any person, any work of life, if they're overwhelmed, things they can do to just get themselves back with that clarity of purpose is absolutely fantastic. So thank you very much, Paul, and speak again soon.